Hey, McKay, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us who you are, what you do.
So yeah, I'm McKay with Five Star Commerce. We work for brands selling on Amazon. So it's all physical product brands that are in e-commerce, and we manage their Amazon side of things. We also do Walmart and Target Plus and such, although most of our work is on Amazon. We
Okay,
serve 450 brands every year.
awesome. And how'd you get into this?
Yeah, so kind of started by accident. I was working at a little Amazon marketing firm, working there and kind of just entry level job. And I was one of the type of people who really wanted to learn everything about it, get really good at it, and do more stuff. And wasn't really maybe opportunities for quick advancement there, but I just started freelancing on the side using Upwork. I made an Upwork profile, started doing a little bit of hourly work here and there. And then after maybe about 6 months or so, I was making maybe about half of what I was making at that other job just freelancing. So I decided to just quit and do it full time. Moved into my sister's basement, freelanced full time. And then since then, it just kind of organically grew with more and more people as I got more busy. And now we're a whole crew. We got 15 people right here in Utah and still going.
Awesome. And what, after you started you quit your job, you started freelancing, what took you kind of to the next level? Like who was the first hire or, what were some of the things that helped you, really kind of establish yourself?
Yeah, at the beginning, everything moved really fast. So, for example, my first month when I had quit my job, I made the exact same amount of money as I did at the other job, right? So it wasn't like sometimes you think like, oh, you're going to quit your full time job; it's so risky. It's like, well, actually, when you're ready, just being able to devote twice the amount of time, right, is really easy. So, but that was really cool. The first month, we were like, oh wow, I don't know why I was so nervous to quit. Um, and I was living in my sister's basement, so I was paying her $400 a month, and I didn't have
Mhm.
any kids or a family at the time, so it's not like it was very risky. But I hired the first part-time employee probably a month after that. Um,
To do what?
so uh, basically be an assistant to me, right? So I was working with all the clients directly. I was like doing all the work, managing all the projects, but there were certain things that I could assign to somebody else. This person actually I worked with before at another company, so they already knew the Amazon stuff. I didn't really have to train them, although I did have to kind of train them on how I do things a little bit, but that like immediately got things going. I had another person I used to work with that helped out part time on top of their full time job. Both those people were just part time. Um, and then I think it's probably maybe 5 months after that that I hired the first full time person to be a project manager.
Okay.
So yeah, that was a big step. Getting a real physical office for me was a big deal too. That's actually like one of my big values is like not working from home, which is kind of funny because most people they would like to work from home, but not me.
Mhm.
Um,
Why is
but yeah,
that?
those first few months moved quick. Well, it's all about keeping like work separated and being able to focus on what you're doing. Now I have 3 kids, so if I'm at home, it's very distracting. If the kids know I'm there, they want to hang out with me and everything, and
I
it's
get
almost
that.
like you get the impressions like, oh, why is Daddy not spending time with me, right? Whereas if you're gone, it's different. But even back then, like when I went to college, one of the things I learned so I went to a school where I was like, everyone was like way academically more advanced than me because I got in for drums. I was really good at drums in high school. I got a percussion scholarship. So us and athletes, sometimes you can get into these competitive schools without good grades. Um, but I learned that I needed to actually go to the library and just do work and study there in an isolated spot, not in the
Mm.
apartment where your friends are and stuff. So it's kind of the same process. I just feel like I get more done there. Then once you get employees, I also feel like it builds more of a culture, and they're kind of having that same experience. Whereas I've had employees that work remotely, and after a while, maybe about 6 to 12 months, it's like they kind of just like to float away. Now, obviously, there's exceptions, and maybe if you handle it a different way, right, you can prevent that. Um, but yeah, my approach has always been physically in person, which part of
Yeah.
which has to do with the type of people I'm hiring and what we're doing as far as that goes.
Yeah, I always looked at it as when you go from a physical office to remote or vice versa, it's a different type of person. What I found was when I had the original office, the people I hired, I had to have someone manage them, right? Because they could be at home and just, go mow the yard or whatever it is. But how I am now is I don't care what they do, as long as they get the stuff actually done. Like if they could do their job in 20 hours, I'll pay them full time. Um, it doesn't matter. But I hire people that can manage themselves. But I also do miss sometimes the culture part. But what I've found is we do multiple events throughout the year where we get the whole team together. And that really kind of connects us even more than just an office. Because I always felt like how my personality was is like I dreaded going into the office. And I felt like, and maybe that's because I didn't ever want to work so many hours. And I felt like I had to be the first one in, first one out, or last one out too. So who knows? But that's the cool thing about the podcast. And when I chat with all kinds of agency owners, there's 1,000 ways to do it. You just got to do it the way that works for you.
Yeah, and as the owner, that's the really cool thing about owning your own business is you can design the business
Yeah.
around you, right? You could do the things you like to do. You can structure it around your strengths. So that's a really fun aspect of being able to do that and design a whole company just around your personal preferences, if you
Yeah.
needed to.
So you hire people right out of school. Walk me through kind of the reason behind that and how is it going?
Yeah. So, and that's something we started doing pretty early on. Obviously, the first couple people I mentioned, they were already experienced. But for the most part, at least with what we do, there's just not enough people locally that already do what we do. Now, that's probably less true now, but 7 years ago when we were getting started, that was the case. And the premium we would have to pay to get people who are already experienced with Amazon was high enough that it's like, well, really, I could spend several months training somebody and it's worthwhile as far as the money goes. The other aspect is that we are in Orem, Utah, and we have two very large universities right here. BYU, I think, has 35,000 students, and then UVU has 46,000. So you add that together, it's just a lot of college students all at once.
Yeah.
And it's not like a big city where there's necessarily a lot of local jobs, right? School like BYU, it's one of those schools where people come from all over, and then they often will, after they graduate, they get jobs, back where they were from or whichever. But a lot of them want to stay locally potentially. So we have just a lot of young college students that are right out of school, eager to learn, and usually they've done a few internships already before while they're in college. So we found that to be a good fit. Now we had to structure the company in a way that makes sense, right? So for example, that is part of the reason why we work in person. Because if you're training people new, it's just a lot easier to train them when they're physically by you. Not necessarily because there's any like big limitations, but if a person is, let's say you got a young person who's starting an entry level job and they're brand new to what they're doing, you want to give them as little barriers to ask questions and get information as possible. So for example, I found we typically will have someone be like their designated trainer in the beginning. And I found if I have them sit facing one direction and the next person is sitting next to them facing the same direction, they will learn better and get trained faster than if the other person's desk is facing their desk, right? Or if they're slightly turned at an angle. As little as that, I've been able to notice that preference or that difference. So that's a major thing there. It's like having them in person with somebody there is really helpful so that they ask more questions and they're not feeling like they're bugging somebody all the time. And then also you have to kind of have a career path for them, right? Because young people, compared to like, let's say somebody with 10 years of experience, they're typically wanting to move up really quickly and they kind of get addicted to these little advancements, right? A lot of entry level jobs, you just do the job for a year, then you get promoted and whichever. You kind of have to make that experience. That's something we've learned. So all of our employees, for example, we are assuming that we're moving them up and they're getting a pay raise of at least $10,000 a year. Um, Now, part of that is depends on where you start them at, right? If you have to really pay a premium in the beginning to start them, maybe you can't necessarily do that. But we find with people with little experience, if we train them, we can start them a bit lower, and then after 6 months or a year, we're
What would you
moving
start
them
them
up
at?
really quickly. In our area, usually it's $20 an hour. They're
Okay.
starting, and they're
Okay.
not getting PTO or paid
So
holidays
they're
at first.
1099s to start.
No, they're W-2 employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Um,
Okay. And then what kind of, because I understand with certain young people, they need that participation trophy that I never ever wanted. So did you kind of make up certain levels, right? Like a lot of times what we would say is, all right, well, there's two tracks you can get on. You can get on the skilled track where you're going to be like a really good ad buyer, designer, developer, or do you want to get on the manager track? But you have to kind of go through these things first. And do you kind of outline everything that they have to do in their current job and their new job, or is it kind of more based on kind of time?
yeah. So with us, basically everyone is doing the same job for the most part,
Yeah.
and everyone in our company is generalist, right? Now, there's reasons for that. We don't have them focused. For example, in the Amazon world, you might have a team that does all ads and another team that does all design. We actually have everyone do everything because with our business model, we're always getting new clients in and we're always getting new projects out. So that adaptability is just extra important with specifically what we're doing compared to other business models. So yeah, we're cross training them on everything. Now, some of the employees do have kind of their strengths, right? So there's a few where it's like we don't really have them do design work because they're not as good at it, and other ones might be really good at it, and whichever. But for the most part, they have to understand everything, and their path to move up is typically going from regular staff, or we call them specialists, and they're going to move up to project manager where they're managing projects. But
Okay.
there's kind of different levels within there. So, for example, somebody who starts as a specialist, will move them up. We say a year, but really they end up moving up probably 6 to 12 months. It's kind of in that range. And
Mhm.
then we move them up again when they're a project manager. They have a lot bigger pay bump at that point. And then when they're a project manager, every year they move up. And then at some point we move them to a senior project manager, which manages our biggest projects, the most important projects, and they're going to be our best people. And we charge clients more for those ones. So
And
we're charging different rates.
sure. And do project managers do the work or do they manage the client, the timeline, and the budget?
They do both, right? So they're going to make the judgment call on how much they are going to personally do and how much they're going to sign out. I would say they probably 60 to 70% of the work.
Hmm.
Now that sounds really high, and it is because a lot of the projects, especially there's kind of a difference between our senior project managers and our regular project managers. But a lot of the projects the regular project managers are doing is really just consulting, right? So we have a lot of clients who they're the small ones where they have either a lot of time they might be like a one man shop, it's just a small e-commerce business that a family owns and they're kind of doing all the day-to-day stuff, but they need help and specifically with the Amazon side of things. So the project manager might be consulting them and kind of training them on certain things. So it's like we don't really need a specialist to do certain stuff. Now with the bigger projects, there's a lot more design work and listing optimization and managing the ads that comes into play. Well, that's more. It's like, okay, we've got to take a team approach for that project. And the project manager is going to sign more of that stuff out to the specialist under them. And they're going to be more managing the project. But they're kind of doing both depending on the client.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of clarify that on the podcast because, people sometimes call project management,
Yeah.
project management. I'm like, I just always try to establish kind of, what's the role. So that totally makes sense. How do you, since, kids are coming out of college, how are you gauging if they're going to work or not because they have no experience?
Yeah. Well, we've gotten really good at that. Um, and the big thing is, like, for our entry level positions, really the only reason we have them is because we need a pipeline to train project managers, right? So anytime we're hiring somebody at an entry level position, we're really evaluating, okay, after a year or two, would this person be able to move up? Well, after a couple of years, will they be able to be a project manager? Will they be able to be a senior project manager in the future? So you have to do that, but you're checking more for personality and just kind of their interests and things. So, for example, um, and a lot of this, by the way, we've learned from like having people who don't work out, and then we think back, what were the kind of red flags with that person, and we write
Mhm.
that down. We have a big list, right? But uh, for example, somebody can be really good at being a specialist where they're assigned work to do, but they won't be a good project manager if they're not confident and good at talking on the phone with clients, right? Or even like handling situations where, oh, something goes wrong, I need to fix it, right? Instead of being told to do everything. So we're trying to find those types of people. A lot of time you can tell that just from the way they come across in the interview, right? If they can come into the interview, and we're doing these all in person, um, and they just talk to you normally and confidently like they would anybody else, then it's like, okay, that's a pretty good sign. If they're like, real quiet and kind of timid, that's going to make us think, I'm not sure if they'll be able to be a project manager later.
Mhm.
Then also the ones who have been going through school and kind of been going through the right steps to prep them for this career, they usually always turn out really well. So, for example, in our world, it's usually probably the most common one is marketing majors, but sometimes we get like graphic design majors or PR majors, some variations of that. But usually they're going to have been in some kind of, obviously taking the right classes, but some kind of group or internships and stuff that
Mhm.
have been marketing related. And those people who are like going above and beyond, it's like, okay, that's the type of person that's going to end up being a good project manager. So we really like to look for those types of things. If they just graduated and then they're like, "Oh, now I need to find some kind of job." Well, yeah, that's not a good sign.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about, when I came out of college, I was just submitting resumes. That was really
Yeah.
it, right? Like, and obviously I was probably, excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. I was probably the worst employee ever. And that's why I had to go this route.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think you would benefit the listeners listening in?
Um yeah, I was just thinking about how when you're hiring people, like especially if it's young people that are newer to their career, making sure they have a clear path to move up is just so important. Typically, what we found, because we used to just have specialists and project managers, well, then we found once people became a project manager, they would think, oh, there's nowhere for me to move up. So that's why we needed to come up with senior project managers who manage bigger and more important projects. And now we kind of have some leadership positions even above that. But that's just something to always be aware of. You always need to be thinking, okay, in a year or two from now, can I get this employee so they're somewhere else? And that's kind of been what we've learned as far as if you're not doing that, then it's just a matter of time till someone messages them on LinkedIn and they're like, well, yeah, I probably should try to find something else because what am I going to do this for 30 years? Right. So
Yeah.
just a
Yeah. I
really
love it.
key thing that we've learned over time.
Yeah. Everyone needs to seek growth. They need to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And they always constantly want to grow. So like as a leader, you should always be coaching and mentoring your team for them to be better, not just to get the company better. So, well, McKay, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. And for everyone listening, if you enjoyed this and you want to be around other amazing agency owners that can see the things that you may not see, but also have gone through the things that you're probably going through right now. I'd love for you guys to check out our community. Go to agencymastery.io. And until next time, have a swank day. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.